to my channel. Today we are making some absolutely delicious gluten-free chocolate hot cross buns. Why are we not just making the normal version? Because that's boring and I like chocolate. Oh, 1 second. This is of course my annual Easter recipe episode, so here are the ears. Right, so gluten-free chocolate hot cross buns. Yes, we are passing into bread territory, but do not fear. They are very simple. The preparation itself takes about 10 minutes max. We proof them for an hour, then we bake them for 20 minutes. They are super easy to make and don't require too many tricky ingredients. I have got one special type of flour that I'll be using today, tapioca flour. I mentioned it in my favorite gluten-free ingredients to use video. Tapioca flour I think is absolutely wonderful, especially in bread making, and it is one of those things that is a must for this recipe. But enough chitter chatter, let's hop right into the baking. No? No? Okay. Okie dokie karaoke. We don't need any special equipment today, we just need a couple of bowls, a baking tray, some Glad wrap, and that's about it really. Chopping board would be good too. You don't need a stand mixer, you don't even need a hand mixer, we're all doing this by hand. So the first thing we're going to do is activate the yeast in a bowl of lukewarm water. We do not want, this is milk. So we're activating the yeast in the milk and we do not want it to be too hot. We don't want it to be too cold. We want it to be about the temperature that you can put your finger in, and it's just a touch hotter than your body temperature. So you should just be able to feel a slight heat increase. So I usually warm up my milk by zapping it in the microwave in like 15-second increments. It usually only takes about 30 or 40 seconds to get to the temperature that I want to, but just make sure it's not too hot or it will kill the yeast. Once our milk is nice and warm, we're going to add 2 teaspoons of yeast into it and 1 tablespoon of sugar. The sugar helps activate the yeast because of science, so it's very vital that we put the sugar in with this, but you can substitute this sugar for honey or anything with a natural sugar in it. And we're just going to let that one sit for about 15 minutes until it gets nice and frothy and we're absolutely sure that our yeast is alive, well and working, because that's very important in this recipe. If you find that you get to 15 minutes and your yeast has done nothing, it's just sitting there, probably means you need some new yeast. I'm using the Allinson's. I really thought this said Allison's. Allinson's dry active yeast. Once open, it usually stays alive for about 4 months, and anything after that, the yeast sadly passes away. While the yeast is activating, we're going to grab a large bowl and combine together all our dry ingredients. So that will be 280 grams of gluten-free flour mix. I'm using the Dove's flour mix. 40 grams of tapioca flour, 30 grams of cocoa powder, 50 grams of caster sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, very important to help bring out the nice chocolatey flavors, 1 tablespoon of psyllium husk. Psyllium husk is a binder. If you want to learn more about that, you can watch my favorite gluten-free ingredients video, I'll link up above. But basically it's similar to xanthan gum, but I find it works better in bread. And then on top of that, we're also using half a teaspoon of xanthan gum as well, just to make it nice and flexible. And we're going to give that one a wee stir to make sure everything's nice and mixed in and evenly dispersed. Once our yeast is activated, to that bowl we're going to whisk in 1 egg, 30 grams of melted butter and 30 mils of water. Whisk that up until that egg's nice and broken up throughout, and we're going to pour this wet mixture into the dry mixture. Here I'm going to use one of my favorite tools, the silicone spatula, just to give that a really good mix in. Make sure there is no clumps of flour, everything is nice and dispersed evenly, and you've got a nice sticky dough. Once we get to that point, we're adding in our chocolate chips. Now this is optional, but I also don't understand why you wouldn't. So I'm using about 80 to 100 grams of just milk chocolate chips. You could also use dark chocolate chips as well if you want sort of a richer chocolatier flavor. If you want a sweeter chocolatier flavor, I'd use this one. So we're mixing that all together, making sure the chocolate chips are spread evenly throughout. And now we're going to turn it out onto a very floured chopping board. Because this dough is very sticky, we are walking an incredibly fine line between too dry of a bake at the end and too moist to even be able to make it into a hot cross bun shape. So it is going to be sticky, but we're going to work with it absolutely fine. Make sure you've got a lot of gluten-free flour on your hands, on any tools that you're using, and we're going to divide this big dough into 6 doughs because our recipe today makes 6 large hot cross buns. You're absolutely able to double it as well if you want to make more. I prefer to make them in smaller batches because it's just me and James eating them. So to make this dough, I usually just form it into a bit of a circle, cut it in half one way, and then cut 2 diagonals, making it 6 even, and move it onto a baking tray that has been oiled. So just a light drizzle of oil over that baking tray with a bit of baking paper on it. The last thing that we need to do before these are proving is cover them. It's very important that you also oil the Glad wrap or cling film, however you call it. Otherwise, you'll find when it comes to the time where you have to take off the Glad wrap, half the hot cross buns will come off with it as well. So make sure that it's nice and oiled, and then we're just going to transfer our lovely hot cross buns to a warm area of your house to prove, and they're going to prove for 1 hour. But you know, if your house is a little bit warm, you're in a warm area or you've got a warm kitchen, they might only need about 45 minutes. So just keep your eye on them until they roughly, I want to say double in size, but they don't quite get there. I'd say like grow 60%, if that makes sense. So now they're just gonna sit and prove nicely. You've got an hour to do whatever you want. I would suggest catching up on the latest season of Bridgerton, because that's what I'm doing. I started the season this morning and I'm probably gonna finish it tonight. Holy moly. I'll see you in an hour. Alright, now that our hot cross buns are almost done proving, you can see that they've risen nicely there. I'm going to preheat the oven to 210 degrees Celsius on bake, and I'm going to now create the cross. It's very easy to do this. The cross is just flour and water. So I'm using 50 grams of just gluten-free flour and 4 tablespoons of water. Just gonna mix that together until we form a thick paste. Then I'm going to pop that in a piping bag with just a normal plain round nozzle and just make crosses over the hot cross buns just like that. Perfect. Now we're going to pop these in the oven for about 23 to 25 minutes until they're nicely risen and baked through. And just before we take them out, I'm going to place some runny honey, just the cheap stuff is fine, in a bowl, zap it in the microwave for a bit, and this will be our sticky glaze that we put over the hot cross buns. You can use several things for this. Some people use apricot jam, the cheaper apricot jam. I'm sure other people use other things, but I've totally forgotten what. But all we need to do is use a pastry brush or one of these brushes that I've got here and just brush that over gently. And then we're just gonna let them rest for about 5 to 10 minutes until they've sort of just, you know, set in their ways. We don't want to be pulling them apart too early. And then we're gonna dig into them, and oh my goodness, I'm very excited. Here are the final chocolate hot cross buns. We're just missing one because I used one for the video just now. But have a look at these. Woo! Almost lost them all. Shall we try one then? These are, of course, best served warm, not hot, but warm out of the oven on the first day that you make them. But if you aren't quite ready to finish them all, that's okay. I would keep them in a sealed container or pop them in the freezer and then just bang them back in the oven when you're ready to eat them again. Definitely recommend reheating these before eating, just so you get the best experience. Shall we take a bite? So chocolatey. This is the reason why I really like to use tapioca flour, because it has more of a pull and more of a stretch. It doesn't crumble like a lot of gluten-free bread. Wow. Okay, I'm sure you don't want to just sit here and watch me eat these all day. So, I'll say goodbye. Thank you so much for watching this video on how to make gluten-free chocolate hot cross buns. I hope that you make them for perhaps your Easter Sunday. If you do, please take a photo of them and let me know how they turned out. I'd love to know. If you would like the written recipe for these gluten-free chocolate hot cross buns, you will be able to find that in the description below if you like to follow things written rather than showing. absolutely fair enough. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!